So on this Learning Saturday, this is the second IB session. The session is designing effective case studies, bridging concepts to life in classroom. So today what we're getting better at in this session of 60 minutes is how to distinguish between different types of case studies and their purposes, how to make case study authentic, relevant, and conceptually aligned to our learning goals, and how can we select or evaluate case studies that stimulate inquiry and deepen student engagement. Case studies are a very important part of, the IB curriculum. Irrespective of any curriculum, case studies are very, very important part of everyday classroom implementation and teaching and learning. So that is where we're trying to unpack these three basic questions today in the session of for next 1 hour, 60 minutes. I would like to use, just think about it. What might students learn from this? When you see these images, these are some of the case studies. We have it in our classroom, And, when you look at this thing, what do you think, what might students learn from it? If you can, somebody, 1 minute. Yeah. If I have to look into the chat box, I'm right now sharing this one. Okay. Yeah. So if you see this particular image, just think about it. What are the students learning within the classroom? What is happening within the classroom when you see a teacher and a students with those plans, and you see these glasses with those molecules inside this, and when you see this data inside this, and when you see this, championing change for children's rights and all these things, when you have it around you, just think for a moment in your mind, what do you think is happening? What do you think the students might learn from it, in the classroom? And then we try to build this as like, what is a case study? A case study is a structured learning task where students explore a realistic situation, think through it, and produce a solution, helping them build knowledge, skills, and deep understanding. So case study is nothing but the tool or the things you use in the classroom. It's a structured learning task you use in the classroom so that students can explore in a real-time situations. They can think around it. They can produce solutions to it. They can build their knowledge around it. They can practice their skills around it, and they can dive deeper into the understanding. So case study is like those tasks which help them to build knowledge, skills, and understanding. Yes. So this is basically what we try to do in our everyday teaching and learning classroom is we decide what my students would know today, would do today, and would understand. For that, what we use is something called as case studies. So case study is nothing but a structured learning task within the classroom that students use to explore. Yes. So according to this famous person, Mr. Robert Stake, case study is both the process of learning about the case study and the product of learning. That means it is both ways. You are in a process of making something that is also a case study. You're using the final product of something is also a case study. Here I would like to say is, for example, you are making a model. The process of making a model is also called as a case study. The final product of the model is also called as a case study. We can use both of them in the classroom for students to build knowledge, students to practice skills, and have deeper understanding. So both of them comes under the thing in the category of a case study. Yes, because it helps students to explore, to think around it. Yes, to practice it, and then to develop a deeper understanding about it. So if I have to put it on together, so case study is process plus product. So when it is a process, it is what you see in the classroom is like students observing certain things, students discussing, doing an experiment, concluding, research, recording, right? Writing. So it guides students through how to think. It teaches skills, not just answers. So that's also a case study where we teach the process to the students, or a product where they identify patterns, they extract concepts, reflect understanding. So at the end, they showcase their understanding or common understanding or enduring understanding. So that's also through case study. So case study is process plus product, the journey of the process to the final product, everything encompasses under a case study. And we use case study day in and day out within our classroom for students to build knowledge, students to practice skills, and acquire deeper understanding. So these are the different types of case studies which we can use within the classroom. So if you see this, the first type, the yellow color patch you see is the media-based case studies. When I say it's a media-based case study, that means you use a news bulletin or a news article, or you might use a podcast, right, as a case study for students to teach for teaching and learning. You might use a documentary for teaching and learning. Now, as we discussed, process plus product, depending on the learning outcome, depending on the teaching and learning, depending on the objective, probably the process of making a news can be the case study, or the final case study itself, or the final text can be used as a case study, or both can be used as a case study. If you're teaching students how to write a newsletter, then the process can be the case study. If you're teaching them, teaching a news as an article for them to reflect on, that the final thing can be a case study. Similarly, for a podcast, the process of making a podcast can also be a case study in the classroom through which students are learning, or through a final podcast can also be a case study through students are learning. Similarly, for documentary. Now here you say observation based. This is one type, media, news, podcast, documentaries. Then you have the next type is observation based, when you're actually observing. When you go to a field trip in your real time, in your local event, when you're observing an experiment, that's another type of case study students can use for your teaching and learning, around which you can have questions and critical questions, and inquiry can happen, right? Or sometimes you can have a famous personality. You have an expert, a famous personality. You might be wondering why this has been a separate, separate compartment, because I believe inspirational stories and the inspirational persons really bring together the local context. And when you bring together that local context, students can relate to it very easily. Get inspired very easily. And these type of case studies really fosters action in the class, because they want to imitate them, you know, and imitate their journey so that they can innovate. So that's how these case studies really inspire. These are inspiring stories. These are from the inspiring people. Connecting with them really provide them that authenticity. They can connect with them on a personal note, which inspires their own behaviors, which may lead to action. Yes, that's what in the end we want students to take action of their learning. So sometimes these things really matters to even have famous personalities. Next, I want to come on the top is the purple color section is the survey based. When I say survey based, the data, right? Doing a survey. The process of framing a survey data or a graph is also a case study, and the final graph is also a case study. That can be within the school, outside the school, or a ready-made Statista thing. We can use it. We often use it. And another thing very important is to have a local community or the stories, most relatable, actionable stories. I believe it is very, very important for students to, when we take an inquiry in the classroom, when we try to give about certain text and certain case studies in the classroom, we often give of famous personalities which may not be from their local community or from from their local community, but they are global people. It is good to know about those global people, but many a times for students to take those actions and students to feel that this is something, yes, this I can do in my real time, in my school, in my real life. It is very important for them to be in touch with the local community and the community stories, because that inspires action. If you see this one of the photos over here, this is something, the Kaveri River. So we are based on the banks of the river Kaveri. And then, our students, we have moved for this Kaveri River bank. So that was something authentic. We try to give it to students when they understand about pollution. Pollution is everywhere. We talk about data, we talk about documentaries, but then connecting to local community really helped them to bring in that action component. It made them connect to their local community. It made them empathize. make them empathize with the people, identify the solution and identify the problem and give a solution. That became action is, very student initiated action rather than we, crafting it out. So I believe these are the different types of case studies. You can have it within your classroom, but you may not use all this, or, all the five all the time. But what I would say is have variety of it, probably have more than two types and try to use more than two senses. Many a times, if you are just sticking on to media based or just sticking on to observation based, I would recommend that have variety where you can bring in more than two senses together. I would highly recommend to have 2 to 3 different types of case studies per, within a unit so that students can explore a concept with different variety, different perspective and identify patterns so that the conceptual understanding is very, very strong, leading to transfer. That's the power of case study within the classroom. So the choice of case study is also very important. Along with the choice, even the types of case studies. We can often say that I gave them so many different types of news, so many different types of text, but then this is all similar type under the same boxes. We need to give variety of them for them to explore in different patterns. So that's the highlight. So try to give more than two types and more than two different and utilizing more than two different senses. So when you last chose, now think about it, when you last chose a case study, what guided your choice? Here, I would like to just stop sharing for a minute and just put in the chat box. I want you to write in your chat box very clearly what guided your choice as to, okay, what guided your choice as, while choosing a particular case study for the classroom, or I want to do this activity in the classroom. For this, I will use this. So can anybody write down in the chat box what guided, your case studies? I will choose this particular text, or I will choose this particular video, or I will do this data. I will use this person. So what guided, why did you choose that? How did you think about it? Anybody would like to write in the chat box, please? Okay, according to Chitra, how concepts relate to real life, local and global scenarios. Yes, we always look into the scenarios. We always try to understand, what is the scenario talking about. All right, thank you, Chitra. I would like to go. Shemis. All right. Once again. Yes, we are back here. So it was like, when you last chose a case study, what guided your choice? So I would say, yes, these are the 5 filters. I call them as 5 filters of choosing a case study. Yes, these are the 5 filters which I normally use when I decide onto my case studies. The first filter is the relevance. Yes, relevance in the sense when I choose a particular case study, I try to look into, does the case study connect to the central idea or the learning goal? Yes, whether is this relevant for my students to do this, to learn through this, so that I can reach to my central idea or to my learning goal, which I have identified, or the learning objective, which my students have to achieve. Is it relevant to them? Will it help them or foster them to go there, to meet that? So that is the first, I think that's the first basic relevance. Okay. And the second thing is resonance. Can students see themselves or their context in it? Basically, it is very important that can they relate to the context? Can they relate themselves within that? Only if they make those personal connection, can they, connect to the heart with, through their heart in that, they will be enticed to work towards it. They will be motivated. They will be inclined to go through it, to work around it. So it's very important when you choose not only the relevance, but also the resonance. Will students be able to see themselves within that context? Is it going to be appropriate for them? And next is relatability. Can it relate to their culture, to their community? Because students are surrounded, because students have their own personal identity. They're surrounded by people. They're surrounded by, their own cultural relevance. If they're not able to relate to their cultural, to their age group, to their community, it will not reflect within their action. They'll not be able to make that connect with it. They'll not be able to think from a perspective to it. So it is very important to even think about the relatability of it. And next is the actionability. Can students imitate that? Do you think whatever case study you have, is there a scope for them to copy that and make a difference so that they can innovate later? That leads to actionability, action component. Yes, until and unless they do not have, they cannot connect to the context. They cannot connect to the culture. They might not be willing to imitate and innovate, and then action as a component might be difficult to achieve. And next is diversity, variety of it. Some from local, some from global, give the complete perspective. We always say in IB, we move from local to global perspective. So does it really balance that local and global perspective? So here, these are called as the 5 filters of choosing a case study. Now you have 5 different types of case studies we saw. While choosing which is a suitable one for my classroom today, I look into these 5 filters, whether it is relevant to the learning goal, whether it resonates with the students in the class, whether they can see themselves, connect to themselves, whether it reflects their culture, reflects, support their age group, is it age appropriate, whether it connects to their community. Can they imitate or innovate through that, which will lead to actionability? And have I chosen enough that will balance my local perspective as well as global perspective? So whenever you choose a case study, try to reflect on all these 5 folders, 5 filters. So you have 5 types. So what? Uh, any problem? Okay. So what we are looking into it is we're trying to understand that yes, so what we have understood so far over here is, sorry, we have these 5 types of case studies. We need to use more than 2 different types of case studies within the classroom. And while choosing the case studies, we need to filter them out through these 5 filtering pointers. Because run every case study through these filters before you choose to ensure relevance, depth, and purpose. Then only it will be purposeful, leading to the depth. It will be relevant to your students. It will provide that subject matter depth and purpose, which will lead to action. But then you must be considering, how do we know how many case studies to have? How do we choose this case study? How do we decide onto it? Yes, we have learned there are different types. We have learned filter in this way. But then that comes from, for me, that comes from this model of structure of knowledge and structure of process. Now, being a concept-based trainer myself, this is the learning framework or the learning foundation for any concept-based curriculum, which we do. This was given by Lynn Erickson, and the process was given by Louis Lennings. So if you are using a planning, or if you're using a unit where it is heavily dependent on facts, yes, something like a unit of inquiry, which is on social sciences, something like exploration, something like migration, or sharing the planet, climate change, or your unit on anything with how the world works, on scientific matters and materials. All these units are heavily driven on facts. Your sciences and your social sciences are heavily driven on facts. So students are trying to gain their understanding of concepts through facts. So when I am doing that within the classroom, I need to make sure that for students to transfer, how many case studies to choose. I will choose the case study if it is a heavily fact-driven unit where facts are very, very important, then I have to choose at a time within the classroom 4 plus different types of case studies. For this, I mean is, for example, you have one line of inquiry. Within one line of inquiries, you have to make sure that to teach that line of inquiry, I choose at least 4 to 5 different type of case studies, which all of them students have to explore to reach to the goal, reach to the final understanding which they're trying to achieve. Because if you see from their structural model, single case study may not be suitable enough for students to identify the pattern and transfer and I have that conceptual understanding. So it is very, very important for students to have multiple case studies to see the pattern. How does it work? Yes, for example, you will see examples later, and then when you're having a process, for example, you're teaching a scientific process or a design thinking process or writing as a process or reading as a process or comprehension as a process or drawing as a process, or art as a process, then you might choose one or two because when a process driven, it comes through practice. With a single case study, even with a single story, you can make sure you can make students understand the concept and lead to generalization or central idea. Yes. So it is with a single concept, and later on, you can give them multiple opportunities for them to practice. But when it comes to a facts unit, where you have a lot of facts, but with a single fact, it was difficult for students to understand with a single case study. So first and foremost, what we need to do is we need to identify whatever I'm teaching in the class, is it more fact driven or it is more process driven? If it is more fact driven, I have to have more than 4 types of case studies for the same conceptual understanding. But if it is more process driven, I am teaching the process, which they will learn and do it at the end, then even 1 or 2 case studies will work. Here I want to say something is, when you're teaching with if it's a fact, do not simultaneously use it. It will not work because you cannot, the students may not be, identify concepts and reach to understanding from process in the same way as fact. Both of them are different. Their foundationals are different. They are built for different foundational learning. You can use the same case study first for process and then for knowledge, or you can use the case study first for knowledge and then for process, but not simultaneously. The same story can be used to teach reading and writing. The same story can be used to talk about the morals, but not simultaneously at the same time. Because the foundational principle, the foundational framework doesn't make students allow that. So try to have it, do it at another, not simultaneously, but separately. So let me give you these examples. Now you have a water conservation, and let's talk a case study. So you are teaching a water conservation. So your case study is a water conservation product in rural India. Now, if you're taking a unit which is based on knowledge and facts, students analyze the concepts like sustainability, interdependence, and responsibility. So when you're teaching such concepts, students are using the case study of water conservation in rural India. They look for patterns and generalize that sustainability practices can communities value shared responsibility. So this is one we are using this. Now the same case study as I can use when I want students to design it, within the steps as a collaborative process. For both of them, I'm using the same case study, but the purpose is different. That is what I meant. You cannot use it together, not simultaneously, but different, depending on whether it is for knowledge building or it is for process building. That is the base of, figuring out. Now, if you see next, fraction, data handling. Now look at the number patterns. So here you have a village who keeps a track of how much water finally each family uses every day. Now you'll see through this, data, I can learn simple averages, comparisons, fraction, half of a water is used for cooking and all those things. So it's all about the facts, which I derive from my data handling from a data handling graph. But if it is a process, I will first like to collect the data that's a part of the process. Then I plot the graph and then I try to build on the data on that. So that is my process. Both involves data handling and fraction, but the purpose is different. Yes. So depending on the purpose, as I said, your case study can be a process. Your case study can be a final product. Both are case studies depending on the purpose. So what designs the purpose is whether your enduring understanding is more fact-based or whether your final understanding is more process-based. Now, when you're writing a persuasive text, concepts are argumentation, audience awareness, rhetorical devices, and tone. The focus is understanding pattern in language and structure. So effective persuasion uses evidences. So I have now only with one text, students will not understand what are the effective persuasion techniques. I have to give them multiple text to figure this out. Yes, what is evidences? What is logical reasoning? How is the structure based? Yes, for students to understand this very concept of audience awareness and argumentation and devices in a persuasive text. With a single text, it might be difficult and challenging. It will not happen. They will not see the pattern. But if I'm trying to teach them to write a persuasive essay, step-by-step process, even a single process of writing a persuasive text, of brainstorming, outlining, drafting, and revising, and finally they write one text, they'll still be able to understand it. I request people to be on mute, please. Thank you. So the idea is to understand is before identifying the case study, is it the purpose to draw the facts, use the facts to reach to the understanding, or go through a process to reach to an understanding? Sciences like rainwater harvesting in a village. I have all taken that village examples and I'm trying to show you that, how a same case study is used in different way as a knowledge-based unit and as a process-based unit. So if you're trying to understand the village builds a system. So system of rainwater collection. So they learn that rainwater can be saved for later. They see patterns, more rain. So you will see multiple systems. But now here you draw a simple plan to make that system. It's a process. Same way in community studies and social studies, village rules about how to use water and then. So in a similar way, you will have for SOK, they form rules, they know the waterfalls, and then they follow the process in the sharing the rules. So what I want to share over here is basically a case study is nothing but a learning tool, yes, which deepens your conceptual understanding, which fosters inquiry and critical thinking and provides perspectives and bridge students and strengthen the global. So if you think case study as a learning tool, it will be very, very easy for you to choose it. So now what I would like to do is I would like to stop sharing right now. And one minute. Okay. All right. Now, what I want to share over here is, we have seen different types of case studies now. You have 5 different types of case studies, which we discussed about it. You have seen 5 filters, which we've spoken about it. And you have seen how SOK and SOP, helps and guides you how many case studies to have and what type of case studies to have and how many case studies to have, whether if it's SOK or SOP and things like that. So I want to know over here is there any question? Or I designed this, it's almost like we still have another, half an hour of the session pending. I had designed this in a way that I would like you to work a case study, choose a unit, think about a unit which is upcoming for you and try to think about this case studies, which are the case studies you want to be using and try to filter that out and share it across. Will that be okay with everybody? So I give you another 5 to 10 minutes of time. I'll share my screen with you and try to share those five different types. And then you can put it in the, yes, I will do so. I'm just sharing my screen to share you the five different types of case studies, right? And then we come back to it and give you 10 minutes to do so. 1 minute over here. And yeah, yep, here. These are the five different types of case studies. So I give you, choose one unit you have, which is upcoming unit. It can be any unit of your choice, unit of inquiry. Try to choose at least more than two different, or at least three different types, which I often recommend. Types, either from media based one, observation based one, famous personalities, either three this, or media survey local community, or local community famous personality and observation based. Whichever out of these five, choose three. Yes, I give you 5 minutes to do that. And after 5 minutes, I'll ask you to check back through this filter. Yes. So I give you 5 minutes to do so. In a scratch of paper over there with your, in a paper you have, try to think of a unit and try to figure this out. Yes. Till the time, what I'll do is I'll try to change the setting so that everybody can unmute and ask questions. Just give me a moment till the time you're working. Right. Thank you so much. I have put the form in the attendance, and uh, anybody who has any question, want to work along to create those case studies. As a teacher, this is one of the prime rules, and this is one of the prime information. This is one, at this point, I would also want to share one thing is, whenever you're designing case studies in the classroom, there are certain things we need to understand is, when you design a case study is either those case studies can be digital, those case studies can be for with reading and writing, those case studies can be teacher learning materials, your manipulatives. Yes. So all your case studies can be oral in nature. We need to kind of have a balance of all those things. And especially when you're creating teacher learning materials, it is very, very important that your teacher learning material is, sometimes what we say teacher learning material is, your printed sheet, which is in laminated and students are reading. These are not called as manipulative. Manipulatives are manipulables. They change in form, right? For example, you have a paper and you have folded the paper to make it into a fan, and you're trying to figure out how that fan will run faster. And then through that, as a process of case study, you are learning that becomes a teacher learning material, which is foldable. You need not have, a lot of bigger things for case studies, even small things in the classroom like paper, even nature. When you ask students to move into the nature and when you're teaching them pattern, as we all know in school, plants grows in numbers, in odd numbers, threes, fives, sevens. If you want to teach them skip counting, if you want to teach them patterns, they just have to be in the nature, and that can be our case studies. So it is not important to have, those very big case studies. What is very, very important is to use it in an effective way. It is relevant to the goal. They're actionable. Connected to them, they can see the relevance of it within them. Within the classroom, you can have spaces where you have different materials that can be used. Yes, but then the idea is the choice of material. What are you trying to figure out? When I say natural materials, the pattern, the sizes, the shapes, what you do out of it is important. So that's where I'm coming from is when I say case studies are everything. What is like a important toolkit every teacher should be having with them, within their, within their kitty every day when they enter into the classroom. So I just want to say with that, I hope you had a good session. If you still have any question, I'm still over here. And if you feel that, yes, it's good to go, then we have another session coming up at 2:45 with Maithili. It's all about research skills. We'll see you there.